Okay, we have a few things happening in this video. First, I want to share how I began building myself a little career as an artist. The vast majority of my experience in this regard has revolved around selling work through galleries, which I think is the type of career most people who want to be an artist might be imagining. I would call it the traditional path, and I mean, it's an amazing path. It's a dream to get to paint all day and then have a separate entity, the gallery, handling all the promoting, showing, selling, business sides of dealing with your work. However, how to actually achieve that dream is somewhat of an enigma. It's not like a normal job in which you interview and apply and suddenly you have a job and you get a nice steady paycheck every other week. It's much more of a gradual build, and I want to share my experience with what that gradual build looked like. Second, I want to talk about why, as of last year, I ended up starting this channel. I'd gotten quite comfortable handling my career in this gallery-centric, more traditional way, and I was quite skeptical about the idea of branching out from that at all, about trying to make videos online and promote my stuff online. To put it frankly, I think I thought that posting on social media was like a little stupid and a little embarrassing. However, a year into doing this, and I think it's actually one of the most valuable things I've done for myself, and I want to share why. Okay, third thing happening in this video, you'll notice that my studio looks a little bit different than in my last long-form art video. Welcome to my childhood bedroom at my parents' house. I was working there in between the end of a lease and a big trip of mine, and I want to show y'all what a couple weeks workflow looked like in this transient, multi-purpose, little carpeted studio space of mine. Okay, fourth and last, I want to talk about why my scenery, my studio, dare I say, has changed again, why I'm sitting here, and what's coming next. That's the roadmap. Let's get into it. We begin with me, an art student getting ready to graduate back in 2019. I was terrified. You know, how on earth was I going to make money after I graduated with an art degree? Fair question. In college, you aren't really taught how to do that, how to make money, because that's not really the point. Like, the point of making art isn't to make money, so of course that's not the thing that professors are gonna want to be focusing on and teaching on in their classes. Which I totally understand. I wouldn't have wanted that to be the focus of my education. However, you run into a problem when you live in the world and have to be making money, and that problem is that without the artwork generating some sort of income, it becomes really hard to justify dedicating the amount of time and resources that you had been able to dedicate to it when you were a kid or even when you were in school. So much so that I had noticed it was actually quite common for people who were, just incredible, passionate artists to basically completely stop making stuff after leaving school. You graduate, you are suddenly in a place where you don't have any professors telling you what to do, you don't have any deadlines, you have no idea how to make a career out of your art, so you get occupied with figuring out what your actual career should be with everything else in life that actually needs your immediate attention. It makes sense, but I really did not want this to happen to me. I knew that I would really regret it if I fell out of the habit of making stuff. So my priority when I graduated was to organize my life in a way so that I could continue dedicating as much time as possible to painting, even in the midst of me inevitably not knowing what I was doing with it career-wise. My hope definitely was that if I just stayed consistent enough, I would eventually figure out a way for it to become something I could sustain myself from, make money from, which it did. And I've thought through 3 specific things I did that I think were really good moves in helping me stay consistent enough to actually make that happen. First crucial thing for me was not prioritizing my jobs. I feel like this sounds like the worst advice you could possibly give in the world. Your job seems to be the thing everybody in life prioritizes above everything else. But we are prioritizing something else. After all, your job is just the thing that is temporarily holding you over. It isn't your end goal. This does not mean don't work hard at your job. I work hard at literally everything you do ever. This more means to find a job through which your hard work is making it easier rather than harder for you to pour into what your actual priority or ambitions as an artist are. When I first graduated, I worked full-time at a cafe. It was honestly perfect. It was very physical work, which I found very energizing, and it was mentally very low effort. So when I clocked out, and I had so much freedom in the brain space. Also, the schedule was amazing, like early morning, 5:30, 6 a.m. to 3:30-ish. I had the whole afternoon and evening ahead of me to pour everything else into painting. It was beautiful. Now, I did eventually start teaching. I taught part-time at a school, part-time online at 2 different art centers in the evenings, and I had a few private students I was teaching out of my own studio. I have to admit, one of the reasons I started doing all of this teaching was that, I definitely felt pressure of having like a better career. I was more proud to tell people that I was teaching than I was to tell them that I was working at a cafe. Pride will really make you do some things. On one hand, teaching art definitely did make it feel like I was centering art in my life, which is exactly what I wanted. And certainly working hard as a teacher, it did give me like a lot of purpose and motivation and excitement for working on my own stuff in my own studio at the end of each day. However, on the other hand, teaching did have such a huge mental load. I never actually mentally clocked out, and that did unfortunately just mean that logistically I had less time and less of the brain space for my own work. I went back and forth on it a bit at the time, but looking back now, I definitely do feel like stepping into teaching all of the time did force me to prioritize my jobs over my own painting a little bit more than I would have liked. And if I were to do it all again, I would highly consider staying in a more like service industry position a lot longer than I did. I wish I hadn't let other people's expectations of like what a suitable career was influence me as much as I had, especially because frankly, after tips, this is messed up. Teachers should make way more money, but I was making almost as much at the cafe as I was teaching. Oh my goodness, yeah. Ridiculous, but just something to think about. The better career does not necessarily mean better for your life. Your goal is to find the kind of job that helps support you as you reach your actual goals, not the kind of job that becomes your sole focus and goal in and of itself. I need this. Okay, second very useful thing that I did was getting my skin in the game. Skin in the game. Definition: to have incurred risk, monetary or otherwise, by being involved in achieving a goal. The biggest way I did this was I started renting a studio space. Now, my first studio space, it was nothing extravagant. It was a corner in my best friend's woodworking barn. But the $125 that I paid for it every month, that was the perfect amount of moolah, the perfect amount of skin to make me feel like I had to be very committed to working in there. To make me feel like a healthy amount of guilt if I ever was too tired after work to go in and paint. Especially when I was teaching, the guilt of potentially wasting money was unfortunately a little bit necessary in motivating me to consistently go in. Again, so much, at least for me, the early stages of building a career as an artist, it had very little to do with actual like strategic business moves and was much more about just becoming the type of person who is committed to doing the actual process of painting as much as possible. Another example of how you could get skin in the game is maybe it's as simple as just telling everybody in your life that you're an artist. Like, be so loud and obnoxious about it. And then when they ask like, oh, well, what are you making right now? You're going to be pretty embarrassed if you haven't done anything in a month. You know, you are calling yourself this thing. Go and live up to that title. Or maybe another monetary example, paying hosting fees for a website. Why would you do that and then not actually follow through and use the site? You know, consistently upload new work to it. Tell the people in your circles to go visit it. You get the idea. Okay, and third move that really made a big difference, apply to everything. There are a surprising number of opportunities out there for artists to help get your work out in front of other people. So many shows, so many residencies. You just have to find these opportunities and apply to them like it is your full-time job. There are a few things in particular I would recommend searching up online. First, I would look up all the juried shows in your area. Juried shows are essentially open shows where anyone can submit some images for consideration and a juror curates a show from all those submissions. Often there's a theme, often there's some prizes the juror will also award. The upside to these kind of shows is that they're normally very open, like anyone can apply, it doesn't matter what kind of experience you do or don't have. The downside is that it is typically quite a large group of artists that are selected, maybe 20 plus artists in one show. So it's definitely not like you're gonna have a gallery all to yourself. This does of course make it a really great way to meet other artists if you go to the opening, which is you should definitely do. But you know, a relatively low amount of attention might be on you. Also, heads up, there is normally some sort of application application fee, maybe $20, $30. Tip though, if you are applying significantly before the deadline, I would not do this the day before. I would not even really do this the week before. If you're applying like 2 weeks before or more, I don't think it hurts to email and ask if the application fee could be waived. In some cases, that might not make sense for them. They might just say no, but I don't think it hurts to ask, and they will sometimes say yes. Okay, second, after juried shows, I would search up just all the galleries in your area. Focus in on the galleries that show and sell work that is similar in vibe or in price to the stuff that you make. Then see if those galleries have an email address or some sort of submission form on their site. Now, a lot of galleries whose websites you might visit, they might actually very clearly say on the site, like, we are not accepting unsolicited portfolios. You will see this especially with higher end galleries in bigger cities. Those places, they already know who they want to represent, who they want to work with, and it's not worth their time to go through the hundreds of portfolios us nobodies would be sending them. Fair enough. Other galleries, though, they will provide on their site either an email you could send your portfolio to, or they might have some sort of open call in which they are accepting proposals for shows. These proposals will typically involve you writing a statement about your work, writing an explanation describing the type of show you would have in their space, and of course, submitting images. Now, quick gallery crash course. Depending on the gallery's model, they might function by having like a roster of artists whom they permanently represent, whose work they house and keep inventory of and show and sell long term. Or they might function through putting on shows that rotate every few months and feature new artists each time. In this case, at the end of the show period, they would ship any sold work off to the collectors and return the rest to the artist. It's also possible a gallery does a little bit of both, has permanent artists and rotating ones. Every place is slightly different. It is typically much easier to get your foot in the door for a shorter term one-off show than it is to be picked up by a gallery for permanent representation. For context, for the first 3-4 years of me trying to work with galleries, it was all short-term shows. Those are so much easier to find because, well, there's never really going to be any formal open application that just anyone can submit to be considered for representation, whereas galleries will often have proposal submissions that are open for anyone for the singular shows. I feel like representation happens more through invitation or word of mouth. Because of this, if you want to get on a gallery's radar for representation, I would recommend just consistently applying to all their open calls. If they have any, make your interest in their business clear. Or you can, as long as they don't say on their website not to, you can just send a cold email to them with your portfolio, inquiring if they would be open to trying to sell your stuff. Okay, shows, galleries. Third thing I want you to search up and apply to, residencies. Artist residencies are programs that typically invite artists to come live and work in a new location for anywhere from a week to a few months. The main point is that you are able to step away from your normal life, all of your normal responsibilities, and go somewhere new to put all of your focus and energy into a specific project. They are also an amazing way to meet other artists. Typically, a residency hosts multiple people at one time, and often they include some sort of show at the end of your stay. Now, money is an issue with residencies. It costs money to leave your normal life, take time away from work, and go do this thing. Some residencies give the artist a stipend, but a lot of residencies don't, which means you might need some savings. I've done 2 residencies, one with a stipend, one without. The one without, I was only there less than 2 weeks. The one with, I stayed for a long time, 3 months, because, they were paying me so I could justify staying a lot longer, Now, at the very least, the residency should be providing free room and board. There is a selection of residencies out there I would stay away from. They actually require the artist to pay to go do them. That seems ridiculous to me. That seems more like a summer camp rather than like a professional experience you are having. I would never apply to a residency with that expectation personally. So just as you are doing your Googling, watch out for those. This phase of me really following this advice, really consistently putting myself out there, searching for new shows and new galleries. I would say this started right before I graduated in 2018, then 2019 continued, 2020 slowed down for obvious reasons, and then 2021 picked back up. I just counted, and in total I participated in 20 shows and 1 3-month-long residency over these years, most of which I got into via responding to open calls, filling out proposal forms on galleries' websites, or being invited after a curator saw my work elsewhere. Most of those shows were just jury type shows where I was one of 20 people maybe, and then there were a few small group and a few solo shows. They really ran the whole spectrum in terms of types of venues. I showed in a high school hallway, for example, because I was friends with the teacher at that school. And then I also showed in some bougie-ass galleries with marble floors and bottles of champagne at the openings. There was a range of experiences and they were all awesome. It is such a treat to just have a place for your art to hang and be seen. You never know when or how or through what venue the right person is going to find your work, so you just want to keep creating as many opportunities for your work to be seen as possible. Now, I hate to break it to y'all. This was not only a lot of work, to always be moving my artwork around, seeking out new opportunities, new places to show, but also I was probably losing money from doing all of this. After paying for application fees, after paying for the gas to drive all these places, a lot of times, probably most times, I never sold anything from any of these shows. But I was having a blast, and it really felt like I was doing it in a way. Like I was doing the things that I knew artists were supposed to do. And I was very hopeful that if I just kept going, maybe eventually it would become something a little more sustainable. Which sure enough did start to happen. Not to the point where it was a reliable career, but at some point through all of these shows, I started making some money back. I first started pretty consistently selling small paintings. At the time, I had been doing a lot of these teeny tiny paintings on these handheld wooden blocks, and I would price these in the $100 to $300 range. Just from a purely salesman perspective, a perspective I largely try to avoid when thinking about what I want to make, it was great to have these smaller pieces available. They are a lot more accessible to a lot more people. I was not selling big paintings, like anything larger than, 9x12 was kind of my max, but my small paintings, they would just fly away from me. Okay, location change, I'm moving, there are too many bugs. The other thing I started successfully making money from were portrait commissions. I didn't necessarily plan on becoming a portrait artist, but I just started getting a lot of interest for portrait commissions. A lot of people started wanting them because I had been doing a lot of paintings with figures at the time. Not like formal portraits, just paintings involving humans. People would see these paintings at my shows and be like, oh, she paints people. Maybe I could commission her to paint a portrait of me. Or, of some family member, right? And I would almost always go, yes, I will paint you. Because I wanted to actually make money, and I've done quite well with portrait commissions ever since. Starting to realize the types of things I could actually sell felt really exciting. A lot of the paintings I was doing at the time were not things I could easily sell. I really loved doing huge paintings, but that meant they were obviously much more expensive, so there was just a smaller potential collector base for them. Some of the portrait commissions I was doing were also very pricey, to be honest, in the multiple thousands of dollars range. But I did find that people were a little more willing to spend that kind of money when they were getting a custom piece. Anyways, it felt really good to start making money back. I had felt for a while like I was making things that were valuable, and it was really great to find people who recognized that value and who would give me money for it. I was, however, just operating out of these one-off shows still. I was constantly seeking out new shows to be a part of, and what I really wanted at this point was for a sales-focused gallery to pick me up and permanently represent me, permanently house and sell my work, so that hopefully I could have something a bit more consistent, so that I could stop having to find new shows and new venues all the time. This finally happened in 2021. 2021, I ended up connecting with the gallery I worked with up until last year. One of my really dear friends who I had met at a residency actually introduced me to this gallery, and when I finally met the owner, it was just an instant match. Now, this was maybe the 50th gallery I had walked into since 2018. I had been consistently putting myself out there, applying to things, going to all the openings, introducing myself to all the gallery owners, writing emails. I'd been consistently doing all that for 4 years now. A lot of trial and error, but you know, when it clicked, it clicked. Me and the owner, we immediately got along. She immediately took me on. Immediately the first week made multiple sales. It was so insane to me. I will never take for granted how cool that felt. I also started selling much larger paintings through her, like big paintings up to 5-6 feet. And I was mind blown that that was possible. I hadn't been able to sell big work like that until being represented by this like very sales focused place. One thing to share about galleries is they do take 30 to 50% commission of every sale. So let's say if you sell a painting for $6,000, they might take $2,000, $3,000, and then you get the rest. For me, this split was always so worth it. It's really, I mean, it's difficult to sell like niche, expensive things, and I think having the legitimacy of a gallery behind you does a lot in helping the buyer commit more to the purchase. So, you know, 2021, I felt pretty darn good. I had a permanent gallery facilitating a lot of new connections with new collectors, and I also had a solid 4 years worth of people I had met who knew that I did portrait commissions, who had bought small paintings from me in the past. It got to a point where suddenly every month or so, like something would happen. The gallery would sell something, or someone I met a year ago would email asking if I still was doing portrait commissions, if I could do something for Christmas, or someone I met 3 years ago who had bought a teeny tiny little $100 painting from me would, you know, email us saying, "Hannah, I have this painting of yours. I've looked at it every day for the past 3 years. I love it. I want something new. I want something bigger. What do you have?" And then, you know, on the other hand, sometimes a month or even 2 months would go by with just like nothing at all. And I would be sitting there thinking like, oh my gosh, my good luck has come to an end. It's all over now. And then, you know, the next week on a random Tuesday, the gallery would sell the largest painting I had ever sold. It was really cool to see how all those years of work had compounded in a way, had like grew to something that was actually starting to look like a consistent source of income, a sustainable career. And that is actually where I'm gonna end this section for now. That was the build. Actually, okay, 2 things I'll super briefly mention, just because they very much fall in line, not so much with galleries, but with like traditional thing people who want to be artists do. I did end up going to grad school in 2021 as well to get my MFA, with the thought that maybe I would potentially use that degree in the future to teach at a university level. I have a lot of conflicting thoughts about the fact that I did that. Like, sometimes I think it was the most valuable thing I ever did, and then other times I think it was the worst decision I ever made in my life. I don't know. Let me know if a different video about grad school, getting your MFA, if that would be valuable, because I have so many opinions. Another significant development is that last year I got an Elizabeth Greenshields grant. Huge thanks to them, which grants, by the way, that's another thing everybody should be Googling up and applying for. Receiving that was a huge help last year, and is a big reason I was able to dedicate so much time to painting. And with that being said, this first section is over. Those have been the more traditional things I've done in order to build myself an art career. It was all working quite nicely, like I was getting quite comfortable with everything. And then last year, the gallery that had represented me closed. And I knew I needed a little pivot, either a new gallery to work with, or potentially a more visible online presence. I was definitely curious about making online content about my art. The idea that I would be able to reach a much larger audience was quite appealing, as well as the idea that I could potentially sell directly to people rather than splitting a commission with a gallery. But that being said, I had some major reservations about trying to do this as well. Let's get into what those reservations were. Also, though, I have to move again because the sun is really in my eyes. Okay, first reservation. When I would think about the artists who I look up to the most, who make the work that I'm most envious of, out of 100 of these guys, maybe 2 or 3 of them have heavily relied on this world of social media in order to build their careers. Most of them do it the traditional way, and it made me think maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe social media doesn't really facilitate making the most quality art. And I can definitely see this perspective. You know, putting yourself in a social media world in which success is often measured by appealing to the largest number of people possible, putting yourself in a world in which you can very often rely on attention grabs rather than like lasting quality and depth, it does just sound like a really fabulous way to potentially lose all of your sense of rigor. Yikes. That was my first real big reservation for starting this channel. My second was just my own, massive ego and fear of failure. Hopefully other people relate to this. Hopefully it's not just me, but I just hate being perceived doing things that I'm not good at. And who would have thought when I first started trying to make videos, I was really not good at it at all. I didn't know how to edit. I certainly was not comfortable talking to a camera. And I also I had no sense of what would make for a video that, one, was personally fulfilling for me to spend time making, and two, actually valuable for someone else to spend their time watching. The thought of trying something new, the thought of trying to figure all of that out in such a public forum where literally anyone could find it and watch, oh my goodness, it just made me want to shrivel up and die inside. So much so that it took me 6 months after finishing recording my first video to actually get the guts to go and upload anything. And every month I was like, this month I will finally upload. Nope. Okay, next month. Nope. Okay, next month. Yeah, 6 months of that. 6 months for me to get the guts. I probably would have never uploaded, but thankfully at the end of the day, I actually am quite rational, and my rationality really won over. I knew I needed a new way to get my work out there. So I uploaded. Things started very slow, and for good reason. Most of my first videos were just pretty bad. I was basically just setting up my camera, doing my normal studio session, putting music over it, and calling it a day. Turns out those kind of low effort videos are not rewarding to watch. Hardly anybody watched them. Also turns out they are a complete drag to make. Making them did zilch for me personally. It mostly just felt like a nuisance and waste of time that I had to set my camera up every time I wanted to paint. And then it felt like an even bigger waste of time that I had to learn how, Final Cut Pro worked and how copyright music laws worked and all this logistical crap that was a totally different world than what I thought I was signing up for when I decided I wanted to be a painter. Anyways, as you can probably guess, due to the fact that I'm still here, things did start to change for the better. I can pinpoint a lot of that change to me making my 5 weeks on the beach video. With this video, I really committed to giving a lot more to the camera, exploring the kinds of things I could share in a video that I couldn't share anywhere else that would make the video actually worth making and worth watching. And things really clicked. I started to see the real potential value in what I was doing. There are 3 valuable things in particular that I want to share. First, unlike with hanging work in a gallery, I guess a video puts the emphasis on the entire process of a painting rather than just the finished result. This focus on process is genuinely so helpful. So often, I can be way too results driven in a way that negatively affects me. That's one of the little bummers that comes along with actively trying to sell your paintings, is that it can make you very focused on having a product at the end to show for your efforts that you are really proud of and that you think someone else will also like and want. And unfortunately, when you do that, when you put a lot of pressure on achieving a very specific end product, it can take you away from the process. It can negatively affect your feeling of freedom in terms of what you make. It can close you up, make you less likely to adapt and listen to your work. It can make you less likely to try anything that you are ever unsure of. All of which, in the long run, can definitely take a toll and prevent any progression or excitement in what you are doing. I love that through this little side quest of making videos about my paintings, that process becomes such an important part of what I'm putting out there and sharing in a way that reminds me to keep my focus and energy centered there. It even in a way takes some pressure off of the end result, which is probably single-handedly the most freeing, helpful, fun thing to feel while creating something. For example, a quick secret about the paintings in that beach video. I don't talk about this in the actual video because I think it's probably better for people to come to their own conclusions, but they are not among the things I'm most proud of
I don't love those paintings. I don't know, they're cute, they're fine, but despite how I feel about the end results, I loved making them. I think the time I spent making them was valuable, and I loved through the video getting to share that, getting to share all the whys, the decision making, the thoughts behind each stage, all the hidden work of those paintings that the viewer wouldn't normally get to see, that made working on them so valuable and interesting to me. I guess it was just so nice to still have something at the end that I felt really good about sharing, even if I wouldn't have necessarily been super excited to hang those beach paintings in a show. It helps me to feel like I didn't waste my time on them, and it is a good reminder to me that I can primarily focus on just making the process a genuine and interesting experience for me, and I guess like sharing and marketing that rather than getting hyper fixated on reaching specific end results that I absolutely love or making like perfect sellable products.
I guess another way of saying it is, in making this content, like the process is becoming a product in a way, and I'm sure there are a lot of negative side effects to that, but also right now it more so just feels like I'm diversifying my products. Now it's more like the pressure is evenly dispersed between the two rather than everything just being on the end result. It's a nice feeling. Okay, second thing I realized that made making videos so valuable is the authenticity of connection possible. Over the past year, I've gotten almost 9,000 subscribers. That is a huge number. That is crazy. And my brain would have a very hard time believing that there were like actual real people behind that 9,000 subscriber counter, if it wasn't for the fact that over the past year, I have gotten a handful of comments, emails, had interactions with people where I have just been hit with this feeling of, whoa, this person, they got exactly what I was trying to put down. Or like they even got the thing I was trying to say or do even more clearly than I was able to say or do it. Actually, a really cool example of this happened just last week. Basically, side story, this coming fall, I'm going to be teaching a workshop for somebody who found me through these videos. And for the promotional flyer, the host of the workshop, Matthew, he wrote a little blurb about me and my work. First of all, it was so generously written. Like, my goodness, thank you very much, Matthew, for your generosity of wording. But my favorite part about what he wrote is that he described the branches that I often use in my still lifes as being my playmates. And that word, playmates, I don't think I've ever used it before in the context of my still lifes, but it is such a perfect word. It is such a true, accurate description of what those branches are for me. You aren't really seeing any of these still lifes in this video, but go watch any of my other videos and you'll see what I'm talking about. They totally are my playmates. They are these things I'm orchestrating these little wandering visual adventures with. So I was so pleased and frankly a little shocked when I read that word, because frankly it's kind of crazy that like a stranger on the internet who only knows me through watching these videos, that he would be able to so simply and accurately articulate something about my work to me, like better than I'm often able to articulate it myself.
Hello. Before we continue, the workshop I just mentioned, very exciting. It is going to be in Burgundy, France, just southeast of Paris. Crazy, right? We are going to be painting with those playmates. We would love to see you there, and please DM me on Instagram or email me for more info.
It was such a fun, good reminder of the fact that I'm not actually just talking into a void here. There's actual understanding here with real people who have really valuable insights of their own. Anyways, I think that's such a great sign of things going well. Having strangers willingly decide to listen to you and then offer you their thoughtfulness in return is just awesome. And before making videos myself, I did not know that that kind of interaction was possible online. Like, before last year, I don't think I had ever even left a comment on a YouTube video or sent an email to someone I followed online. Like, I just didn't realize that was a normal thing people did, especially on smaller channels like mine, and that it was such a powerful thing to do. Yeah, now that I've been on the receiving end of it, I very well know how powerful it is. So thank you so much to everyone who has taken their time to watch and engage and write to me in some way. It's a very, very encouraging gift. Thank you.
This connection, there's even more. It doesn't stop at just thoughtful insights and emails and comments. some of the people who have seen something in my work, they have wanted to and been able to purchase something. The first time this happened, I was honestly so shocked. I definitely had been hoping it would happen, but it still surprised me so much because I had just never sold anything online before. I also definitely had this belief that I was going to have like hundreds of thousands of subscribers potentially before any one of them would ever actually want to buy something. I don't know why. I just assumed it would take a really large audience to find any amount of monetary success. Anyways, I was delightfully wrong, and over the past year, or in 2024, while most of my sales were not because of my videos, I did end up selling 3 paintings online specifically because of a video I made. That is both emotionally a very big deal to me. Purchasing art is a big decision that I feel like takes some real trust in the artist. So thank you so much to you all out there who did that, who put your trust in some random painter girl you found online. And also, of course, it's a big deal to me because 3 paintings is very significant income, which I was very grateful to have. Okay, and lastly, the last valuable thing about making videos on here, while we are talking about money, AdSense. AdSense is also quite valuable. Quick YouTube logistical lesson if you don't know how it works. Basically, in order to start earning money from the advertisements that play on your videos, you have to hit a couple benchmarks. You need to reach 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch hours on your channel. Generally, for most channels, 1,000 subscribers is easier to hit than the 4,000 watch hours. It's relatively easy to get someone to click a button. It's a lot harder to hold people's accumulative attention for 4,000 hours. I hit these markers in May, right after I uploaded the beach video, so let's look at my analytics and I'll show you how much money I've made since. In total, 2024, $800 something. You can see the first half of the graph, it's just 0 because I hadn't hit the markers yet. You can also see what my highest earning day was and what one of the lower earning days were. Definitely a lot of ups and downs. You can also see the exact revenues for different individual videos. Notable is that the revenue you are seeing for the beach video, that video has about 250,000 views right now. However, I only got monetized after that video had already racked up probably almost 100,000-ish views. So the $400 you are seeing is earned from only about 150,000 views. Which means on average, I was paid, I guess, a little bit less than $4 per 1,000 views for that video. The number you make per 1,000 views changes all the time. It changes from video to video, it changes from week to week, from channel to channel. It doesn't seem like there's much consistency to it to me, honestly. Like, I have some videos that I've made like $10 per 1,000 views, and then other videos that I've made $2 per 1,000 views. There's just a lot of, it's all over the place. I think there are strategies to try to increase that number. I have not concerned myself with that all too much, to be honest. I've never been paid to do anything like this before. I don't have much to compare it to, so frankly, I think it's cool I'm getting anything. Obviously, $800 is nothing to live off of, but also it's certainly not insignificant, and there would be a lot of potential for growth in the future. And that has been my journey on here. It's been very positive. Thank you all for making it so positive. Final thoughts. I don't know, I think figuring out how to make a living from your art, trying to make something sustainable that is inherently kind of a ridiculous thing to try to sustain yourself from. Oh my gosh, I've used that word so many times in this video. Sustainable. Ugh. I don't know. I think it's kind of a fun, interesting, hard problem to solve. And I guess for now, I'm trying to solve that problem by being here on YouTube. And I'm liking it. I'm liking being here. I think my initial reservations for doing this were mostly me just being silly and being scared to try something new. But I'm really looking forward to continuing, and I want to get more consistent with making videos more frequently. Maybe in the future I will try to, solve the problem of how to make money via more traditional avenues again. Who knows? I love that I get to paint, and hopefully I will continue to do it in whatever context I find myself. Whether I'm showing in a gallery or in a random hallway or here, whether I'm
also having to work at a cafe or work as a teacher, whether I'm working out of my old bedroom or in a fancy studio, or here in the mountains. I'm so happy I'm here. I've crossed the Atlantic, I crossed the Mediterranean, and I'm planning on staying a while, quite some time. My primary motivation in coming here was for the sport climbing, which has recently become my other priority in life, but also not a bad place to make some stuff too. So stay tuned.